And I pay tribute to the member for Newton Abbot for a topic that I'm all too familiar with, having spent my time as a GP. Yet this place may not be so familiar with the inner workings of GP practice. So it's fantastic that we've had the chance today to be able to discuss it. I'd also like to declare an interest because many of my family are GPs, both immediate and wider. So that's important to get on the record. It's allowed us today to debate a huge variety of things, from the Carhill formula, QOF. We didn't really touch on DES and LES, which are the enhanced service agreements that are there. Rural dispensing practices are really important as a funding stream. We've talked about the partnership model, retention, joining up services, the ICB, their toolkits in the interaction with the planning department, rurality, particularly in my area. This is a really big impacting area when it comes to getting services. But I wanted to pick up the comments particularly from the member from Mid-Dorset and North Poole. And fair play for going out to shadow a GP to see what life is all about. Because actually at the heart of what she said was the good care that goes on. Now, if you were to believe the Daily Mail, every GP is on the golf course, every GP is just caring about the money. The money is important, but they care far more about the patients and the quality of care they give. That's what drives them, gets them out of bed each day. And we in this House mustn't forget that when it comes to dealing with healthcare, because it is important. Your chance that you'll get far better healthcare than ever before in the last few decades. So we must lose sight of that. But turning towards the debate itself, I'm grateful again to the member for Newton Abbot, for this is the first chance for me as the Shadow Health Minister to be able to debate general practice and ask the Minister some questions. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn towards some of the questions that I would like to pose to him. The first one is, what is the government's current position and view on primary care and its models? Because in an interview in The Times in January 2023, the Secretary of State said, I'm minded to phase out the whole system of GP partners altogether and look at salaried GPs working in modern practices alongside a range of other professionals. He went on to speak at the King's Fund and the IPPR event in the same years, where he acknowledged, I've observed a GP partnership model in decline, where very soon we're going to have more salary GPs than partner GPs. The status quo is not an option. Then 18 months ago, just 6 months before the election, the Secretary of State stated, what we are minded to do is a sort of phase it out over time. I'm still not sure whether or not the GP partnership can survive in the longer term, but I have reached a sort of firm conclusion that says it shouldn't. So in light of this, and given the importance of the partnership model, could the government clarify its position with regards to the partnership model and any other models that are being considered? I will give way.
I thank the honourable member for his comments about my visit to the GP, because it was an absolutely wonderful experience. But actually, if the proposal is to phase out the partnership model and move to a salaried model, how does he think that will work with the severe cuts that ICBs are facing? With 50% cuts in most of the ICB funding, somebody's going to have to pick up the costs of actually running these organisations rather than the clinical side of it.
She is absolutely spot on, which is why I posed my question to the government, because as was rightly opened for, we do know that primary care is one of the most efficient parts of the NHS. Why? Because the people who are running those businesses, and they are businesses, we have to be open and honest about that, they're the ones paying attention to where the money comes in and goes out, and they take full pride in it. Partly, one, because they care, but number two, their profit is their salaries are paid from the profit that comes out of that. And again, it's a dirty word that people don't like to use, but is the reality of what we're dealing with here when it comes to how we break that funding down. It is still unclear when we get rid of NHS England, as the government has proposed, not only how much that will cost, but how much it will save and where this administrative burden will fall. On top of that, if we lose the partnership model, we don't know what will be replaced. And this is the question to be asked, given it was only 6 months before the election when the Secretary of State stated this. I too am keen to find out the answers to this point. The second question I'd like to pose to the government is, there are concerning reports in the Health Service Journal only this month, which has had sight of a leaked version of the NHS 10-year plan. This is the plan the government has to improve the NHS. It says it will push back the government's ambition to increase the share of NHS spending on primary and community care to 2035 rather than 2029 as originally promised. Could the Minister confirm or deny these reports? When it comes to funding, the government did also raise taxes directly on GPs as part of the national insurance increase. Has his department made any assessment of how much the £886 million uplift that's been allocated to GP practices will have to contribute to meeting the increase in employers' national insurance contributions? And then turning to the ARRS scheme, or the R scheme as we call it, the government announced in April it thought it had reached 1,500 new GPs. But as the RCGP pointed out at the time, and I quote, "More GPs employed in the workforce is encouraging. When considering full-time equivalent GPs, which gives the most accurate picture of GP workforce and the care services GPs are able to deliver for patients, the number published today is lower at 851 GPs. This is encouraging, but when you dig into the data, it appears that we are seeing more locum doctors simply coming back into the scheme. So I'd be grateful to understand exactly how those numbers are made up, where the inference is coming from when it turns to the quote of 1,500 GPs. More importantly, where is this scheme going in the future? Is it something that is time limited? Will it continue? Will it be expanded? And if so, what shape does that look like? Because while it's an important part of addressing provision, we also need to understand exactly what's going on, because initial reviews of the data also suggest that appointments haven't kept up with that pace of introductions of GPs. So I'm interested to understand from the Minister the correlation between supposedly new GPs coming in and yet the number of appointments proportionately not increasing. I'd be grateful for any comment on that. Finally, turning to recruitment, training new GPs is understandably being seen as the priority when it comes to solving the long-term workforce problems in England. As Pulse magazine put it, quote, "This is probably one of the areas of workforce planning that could be considered success. Health Education England, which has been incorporated into NHS England, has been able to meet its target of over 4,000 new GP trainees a year." Close quote. The NHS Workforce Report, launched under the previous government in 2023, made commitments to increase this. It set goals to increase GP specialist training places to 6,000 by 2031, ensure all foundation year doctors do a rotation in general practice, and require GP registrars to spend the full 3 years in general practice. Now, there has been progress, but along with progress comes new problems that are arising. The British Medical Association have warned that up to 1,000 GP registrars could face difficulty when qualifying in summer 2025 without funding to GP practices to recruit newly qualified unemployed or underemployed GPs. So what active steps is the government taking to avoid this, and what support will it be offering newly qualified GPs? But I will give way.
Thank the honourable member for giving way. I'd just like to point out that the ARR scheme, in my practice, which is May Lane Surgery in Dursley, they're actually employing 2 newly qualified GPs, and they're providing a lot of extra appointments for the surgery. So the scheme is working quite well for newly qualified GPs.
I'm pleased to hear that the scheme is working well. The question, if he was here for the start of the debate and all the way through, is what does the scheme look like going forward? And is it the fact that in other places, locums are simply being stepped into the ARR scheme because there's been a shift in the way GPs are commissioning their work and PCNs are looking to deal with that? This is the question at the heart of the nub of it, because on one hand in this country, we seem to be training more GPs than ever before. Yet at the same time, at the top end, we're having a disproportionate number of people not trying to find the work. Now, it's really important we have multidisciplinary teams that take into account the likes of pharmacists, nurses, mental health workers to build around the GPs. And so I welcome the R scheme allowing to do that. It's been widened to get more funding, but as he will know, there is a discrepancy over how much they're funded for and the limitations for how long those doctors can actually work in it. So if I was to return to practice, I would not be able to qualify under some of the R scheme. So this is the questions that the government need to pose, because the scheme is there for a welcome reason. Is it the solution to the whole problem? No, I don't think so, which is where then my next set of questions come to. And as I close on this basis, we have also seen a trend in international medical graduates coming into work in the UK. with a number of international medical graduates overtaking domestically trained medics for the first time in 2023. So has the government considered a scheme similar to what Australia adopts? Australia classifies locations using the modified Monash model, or the Australian Statistical Geography Standard, which ranks areas from major cities to remote regions. It then prioritises overseas doctors into the area of most need. That is something that could help deliver and deal with the disparities that we are seeing across different parts of the UK. I'd be grateful to understand how the government will intend to address that, because that certainly is a model that should be considered. Whether it's the right one for the UK, that is for the government to decide. Chair, in closing, hospitals may save your life, but it's your GP that's been quietly guarding it for decades. This fact is often lost in our debate, so today it's been a privilege to remind both the government, the House and the public of that fact, and I look forward to hearing the government's response.